Harry Bucknall,
David,
thank you so much for coming on the Inquiring Cat Does Travel channel. It's an absolute joy to see you. I have to tell you, Harry, you have been an inspiration to me because, you know, there's an old saying that everybody has a book in them, and yet most people don't get to write their book. And for many years, I've wondered if there's a book within me. And then I read your fantastic In the Dolphin's Wake as the travel writer that you are. And I thought, you know what, if Harry can write a book, I can write a book. It won't be as good a book, but I could be inspired to write a book. But before we get on to that incredible book and your travels with it, just tell me how you went from being an army officer to gamekeeper PR, and now you're a travel writer and you're on your third or fourth book already.
Yes, I think, like all things in life, there was a vague plan at some point, but that parted from reality quite quickly, I think it's fair to say. I think also that as an army officer, and I come from a very old military family, that the notion of doing something conformist would be really out of sort of, it would be left to field, and so and you're always seeking that sort of not necessarily adventure, but reality and doing things for the sake of doing them, as it were, and understanding and inquiring. And I think as a military man, you've seen things and you've been trained in a certain way that you have a prism through which you can understand, and also you can comment because you've knocked around in operations and in conflicts and so on. So that's where I think you get the ability, as it were, if I have an ability as a travel writer. And so travel was always in my blood, and from a very early age, writers like Eric Newby, Jan Morris, Lawrence Durrell, Gerald Durrell, were always sort of great influences, and I enjoyed their writing and I enjoyed their lifestyle more than anything else. So I think as a travel writer, it is. I do not know I can't tell you what the good deals are or where the best places to stay are, but it is more the going and the doing that interests me about travel writing. It is merely a window on life, and a very, very enjoyable way to do that. In other words, I actually enjoy writing because I know it is going to hopefully bring pleasure to others, and that could be pathos, it could be humour, it could be drama, but it is setting the tone for people to understand and enjoy. And further to that, I write for the person who's hanging on the tube, on the strap on the tube every day, who can't do this, and you know, so I can do it. So I write for them, and it is the knowledge you're imparting that they're living life viscerally as well. That's what to me writing is about, and it's a great pleasure, but it is a hard taskmaster.
But when you get, I mean, as I experienced in the Dolphin's Wake, when you start to understand the emotion behind the writer, you start to get emotionally engaged in the book itself as a reader. It's quite interesting how you sort of become a bit absorbed about, you know, where's he going next? What's going to happen next? Who's he going to meet next? Because these amazing people you meet on the journey, and the pleasure you impart that you got from meeting these people, it's very palpable in the pages.
That's very kind. I think characterization it is very important, and because you need to get a sense of the landscape you're traveling through. And of course, these are great characters. I think my new book, A Road for All Seasons, which comes out next March, is about Britain. In a way, that was harder to write because these people are more characterful, because there's a language gate you've got to get through to understand what they're saying. So there's always going to be a slight mismatch, which makes them even more characterful, because they can't quite explain to you in English what they're trying to say in Greek, and you can't quite say to them in English what you're trying to say to them in Greek. So you get this mismatch, and that adds to the sort of not comic opera. The comic opera element of it, I think, is that characterization, and also when you see people in the flesh, when they smile, you get a real sense of who they are, and you get to know people and you get to understand them. And Greeks, particularly, I think, they're very rugged people. They're full of sort of emotion and sentiment and drama, and so they're wonderful people to write about, and you know, from the church to heroes to tourism, that all life is there, and it is your duty as a travel writer not not to place yourself at the centre of the story. You're on the outside. You're looking in, and it is not the Taj Mahal you want to write about. It's a chap who's selling Taj Mahal replicas at the very corner. It is the minor detail that brings the Taj Mahal, or whatever you're talking about, to life. That's what I always get for.
I think your comment about the smile is absolutely spot on, because my dear mother, my dear late mother, she was a little bit snobby. I used to unkindly say that she was the living embodiment of hyacinth bouquet, actually, on occasions.
No,
but so she was always very passionate about the benefits of an English private education, all this kind of thing. And when I went travelling, and I went to Costa Rica, not speaking a word of Spanish, I came away with a very strong impression, which is that and that was a country where nobody, fun enough, had been to Eton or whatever, and in fact they hadn't even been to, Slough Comp. But what you found was the universal language of a smile and good manners and graciousness. You can find that anywhere in the world, and nothing to do with class or education. It's about the people and how you connect with them.
And also in the most unexpected quarters too. And certainly I find when walking to Rome, it came at the most unexpected time and out of the blue. And the kindness of strangers really does exist. Sometimes you can be in a real fix, and suddenly someone will come to your rescue. Sometimes they don't. But that's part of the story. So in travel writing, it's not about, for me, it's not about I've got this great deal and I'm going off to Helsinki on whatever flight. It is about the fact that if I was going to Helsinki on a flight, then I would have gone to actually QED. I'm probably one of the only travel writers that's trying to board a Gatwick flight at Heathrow. So that's the sort of story.
Well, I knew we had something in common.
and British Airways were very understanding when I got that to my parcel, and I said, "You're at the wrong airport." And then they said, "As a travel writer, you really should know better." I said, "I should know." So they gave me the flight free. I was getting the same place, but it was very frustrating at the time.
So now tell us. So the first book you wrote was Like a Tramp, Like a Pilgrim.
No, sorry. The first
so that was the first book. Was this one? Exalted's Weight. So this was the journey
from Venice to Istanbul.
Venice to Istanbul.
Yeah.
So why that journey to start with? Why did you choose that route?
You want some sort of great erudite story of much research.
Well, you won a free ticket at a raffle.
Not quite. No, not far off. So I the year before I wrote this book, I was going out to Mykonos on holiday with my cousin, who is a theatre producer of some renown, and his wife is a journalist of some renown. And anyway, we started off in Kiki's Taverna in Mykonos, and we can have what I can describe as something I really love, and I know you are also fascinated. A really good lunch, and I turned to Nick's wife and I said, Christa said, you should write a book about the Greek islands. And she said, at the time I was doing sort of theatre reviewing and for Arts Council London, and she said, no, you're the writer, you should write a book about it. And there's the moment someone plants a seed in your brain, you think, oh, that's a very good idea. And then you start fiddling around on a map and you join the dots together, you think, cracky, this would be amazing. But the rub in everything, in all these projects, is always the filthy lucre. Where's the money going to come from to do it? And I, at the time, was working in the medals and special commissioners business, making basically big baubles for heads of state who've got too much money. And by pure chance, we pulled off a bit of a deal with the Sultan of Oman. And that then gave me the money to go and do this book. And at the time when when I arrived in Venice, I basically spent 9 months traveling around the Greek islands. What's not to like it? I mean, it is 5,500 miles. I think the actual journey was 42 islands, and the book is 26. But it just the whole thing took over your life, and it was a great. And so when I set out from Venice to get to Istanbul, I didn't really think anything of the journey in particular. I just thought it's a journey. But it's only when you look back and then when you talk to people about it that you understand that probably no one has travelled so extensively through the Greek islands as I have. and I didn't have a residual, hidden knowledge that others don't. But it is a journey very few have had the time to make, and I didn't set out to say now we're going to climb Everest with only toothpick. It was just a journey, and it is just a journey, and there's nothing to brag about it. But that's what I think is remarkable about this book, particularly. It just is that its breadth, and that's the only thing that's remarkable about that book. Which is it was a lovely book to write.
Now you say it's breadth, but you did 20-something islands that covered in the book. What was wrong with the 15 or 20-something that you didn't get in the book?
Well, I would say there was nothing wrong with them, but the secret to writing a book, the 3 rules of writing a book are cut, and cut again.
Oh, I need to make a note of that. I'm writing my book.
And there is a comment I think Frederick the Great made to Mozart about one of his pieces of music, and he said it's all very well, but too many notes. And my publisher, my long-suffering publisher in this case, said it's all very well, but too many islands. And they're usually right. It is when you write a book, it is your baby. People can get very possessive about their writing, but a fresh pair of eyes, and also an objective fresh pair of eyes. Because if I said to you, read this book, you go, oh Harry, it's marvellous. But actually, you need someone to say, no, Harry, that's a crock of shit, and you need to rewrite it. And you think, oh right, sit up and smell the coffee. And you need to, so you're working with people on it. It is always a collaboration book. And so too many islands is exactly that, because you just lose the reader. It becomes too much. Yeah. And also, it's quite hard to be lyrical. I mean, some islands, they're all individual in their own right. They're not all Mykonoses and Paroses. There are some very poor islands out there. And as long as you've got that sense of breadth, the sense of the scope of the Aegean and the Ionian, that's what you need to get. You need to capture that. You can be encyclopedic about it. Then you get people saying, "Oh, I think it's 2 books." No, it's not. 1 book's quite enough. And you need to manage people's authors' expectations when they come to you and say, "I want to write a book."
Well, I think also in terms of selling a book, because I'm currently reading Sir Anthony Selden's book.
He's a very good writer.
Johnson at Number 10, but it's 640 pages long, so it's 4 times the depth of this book. And I have to say, when it arrived from dear old Amazon, and this, by the way, still available on Amazon, but when it arrived from Amazon, I got it out of the box. I went, blimey, when am I ever going to wade my way through that? And I am going through it. It's brilliantly written. And has some very alarming insights, not surprisingly. But a book like this, people will, particularly a travel book, I think, people love travelogues, and they'll be at the railway station, they'll see that and think, that's for my holiday in so and so.
I just say that there are some key points to note about this. First of all, it has a map in it, and it's very important to have a map in a book, so then you know where you are. But the better thing too is that for the heart of reading, and I am one, there are also pictures every now and again to keep you going.
Yes.
so it breaks up the text and gives you something to aim for. And there are no long chapters, because I didn't know very many long words. And so I like to think, I hope it's quite readable.
Yeah. And so have you been back to Greece since you wrote the book?
Every year. No, I go back every year.
You go back every year. What do you love about Greece?
Well, I think the thing about Greece and about writing about Greece is that the moment you write a book or you put pen to paper about Greece, you write a contract with that country, and you forge a relationship. And there is something, the British and the Greeks that have a peculiar, almost special relationship, I think. And what do I like about Greece? I think it is the rugged beauty of it, and you can be charmed by that, and you can be duped by that. You think, oh, look, there's lovely mountains and all the lovely palm trees. And all that. It's a harsh landscape to live in. It is a poor landscape to live in, and the Greeks are rugged people, and they're loyal people, and they are great company. They can laugh, they can cry with you. They will be your family, and they are your family in that sense. You always feel at home there. The moment I arrived there, you just get a sense of great history, and it is not, and it is that sense of great history. It is almost the shabbiness of the place that makes you love it all the more. There's a certain wonderful chaos to Greece, in a sense that it is like family in that sense. It is like, I always think when you see someone and they're in a suit, and then you can see there's some dog hairs on it. They've got a dog. Dogs don't care about it. They're just around you, and they're living their lives around you. And that's what being in Greece is. You're immediately thrown into the heart of the family, and
it's very authentic.
Yes, but it is you've got the twin-headed eagle estate, which is the church and state combined, and the church adds drama. It adds history to it. It is the making of Greece, and it is the heart of Christianity in that sense, or one heart of Christianity. And it is that history combined with the sea and the wonderful mountains and the rugged scenery and all the history that goes with it that makes Greece really very beguiling place to visit. And as you know, I talked about there's no one who loves a long lunch than I do, and the finest place too is in wonderful tavernas and eating great Greek food. But that makes it sound slightly cliché. It feels like home from home in that sense.
I remember sitting in a waterside bar in Mykonos, and the sunset was just going down. And as you know, I'm not the quietest person on the planet. And and the bar owner suddenly came over and slapped me round the head, and he said, "The sunset is unique. Your laugh isn't. Shut up." And I felt very at home that somebody could feel that intimate with me without having met me before.
That was nice of him.
It was. I thought it was quite nice, actually.
You asked about Gamekeeper PR, and which is the small arts and culture agency, communications agency, which I'm involved with all run. And the whole reason that I set Gamekeeper up is because when this book was published, I was very lucky to have a publicist, and which is a luxury actually. And I soon realised that to be a publicist for a book is a very good thing. It is, and so, but I set up Gamekeeper so that it could technically enable me to carry on working while I was away, and enable me to go away to do these, to go and do what I want to do, which is write books. Norman Lewis, the great 20th century travel writer, probably one of the greatest travel writers of the 20th century. He had a series of camera shops, and was he sort of cornered the Leica market in the UK, and that's what enabled him to go off and write books. So Gamekeeper is the vehicle. And also it goes hand in glove. Working with authors and working with publishers is a fascinating area to be in, and it is that which enables me to go off and do crazy things.
So the Gamekeeper is actually the gatekeeper.
Yeah, to a degree. I'm poacher turned gamekeeper. My mother thinks I do PR for gamekeepers. I say, "Mara, I'll do PR for anyone." But he's poacher turned gamekeeper, and the company's logo is a little owl, and as you know, or you will know, Athena, the goddess of wisdom, used little owls to communicate when creators are stuck for a thing. She would send an owl to the tree, and then it would inspire them to sort what happens next. There you go.
Learn something every day when I'm in your company.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
So now your second book was Like a Tramp, Like a Pilgrim.
Yes.
So tell me about that
this
book.
This one here.
Still available on Amazon?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm very big in Brazil too, I'm told recently.
Really?
Yeah.
Amazing.
It was that was inspired. Well, that came about because of this, and it was me walking from London to Rome, which is about 1,200 miles. And I say that to you in a rather matter-of-fact way, and it makes you think that it might make you think that I sort of do this as a routine. It was a huge task, but I sort of slightly believe that someone else did it. It feels like I haven't done this, but I genuinely promise I did. But I'm not someone who says, "Now we're going to climb. Now we're going to storm the South Pole, in just a pair of speeders." That's not my method is to do these things for the everyman. So if I wasn't doing it, you could understand how I was doing it. So it's not me saying that we've got some special Kindle mint cake pack or whatever we're going to do this. It's simply everyday journeys. But
How long did it take you to do that 1,200 miles?
it took me 94 days, which is and I was probably one of the sort of youngest people on the route at the time. And it is like sort of a concrete escape chain, really, a sort of prisoner of war escape chain, because you get to know everybody on the route.
So it's like the Compostela thing across.
Yeah, absolutely, very young, yeah. And so it should take you about 60, 70 days, but I kept stopping all the time to save people, and so it took quite a long time. In 94 days, it seemed like an eternity at the time, but it was a that came about because when I finished this book, and I hadn't written a book before, and I still marvel that I can write a book, even assemble words actually. And I remember I kicked my chair back and I thought, there you go, there's it. And that was the third draft, and it was on my laptop. And I looked out across the field, and there's the horses in the paddock, and the dogs were lying out on the lawn, and the chickens were in the hedgerow. And suddenly, up the valley came this enormous, one tiny little black cloud, very focused black cloud. It hovered over the cottage and just suddenly let go the most enormous thunderbolt. All right? And in those days, my laptop was plugged into the wall, and that's where the internet came from. And I in my mind's eye, I watched the spark go all the way around the wall, and travel up the MCIA cable into my laptop, poof, like that. And then the screen went black, and this little cloud of smoke went up into the rafters. I looked at the black screen and went, oh, fuck, 88,000 words have just gone up in smoke. So what is an officer to do? In these situations, it is not a time to panic. You just pretend as if nothing's happened at all. You go, I'll just put the kettle on to make a cup of coffee. I will think about this. So the kitchen was downstairs in those days, and so I went down to the kitchen and I put the kettle on, and the newspaper used to be delivered to our door, and so on the kitchen table was a Daily Telegraph, and while I was reading the kettle boil, I turned the pages over, thinking what I should do, and on page 3, Malcolm Moore, who was the Rome correspondent of the Daily Telegraph at the time, was written an article on Romano's approach, the new pathway through Europe that he was promoting, which was the Via Francigena. And I said, well, that's my next book. And I said, it is the same as a Greek book, except I'm just travelling from town to town, as opposed to island. And that was it. And for 4 years I talked about it, and everyone said, what a good idea, and how lovely. And then suddenly my publisher said, you're going next week. What? And so suddenly I was thrown into it. I quite enjoyed that element of just being thrown into it. Anyway, the journey came back, and I started to sit down and write about the book. So, when you think, how did it start? Your house was struck by a thunderbolt. And where did the thunderbolts come from? And and he went downstairs, yes, and then you open the paper, and there was this thing. It said, this is the new route going down to Rome from London, and this is the place you go. And I said, so short, I said, what happens? That God smote my house with a thunderbolt. And short of the heavenly host appearing in the sitting room, which was quite cramped in those days, to tell me, guess where you're going, he then led me downstairs to read the paper, and there it was. So I was sent by God.
So it was to Rome.
It was to Rome, yeah.
So we know what happened to you, but what happened to the laptop?
Well, so when I give this little talk, and everybody goes, oh, and then someone, very clever person like you, at the end says, what happened to the laptop? You are a fool of a writer if you don't back things up. I lost about 200 words, and so I'm very religious about backing up.
Yeah, I do as well.
What I also do is I send a copy to my sister in the Lake District every night of what I'm writing. So you only ever, it is impossible really to be, well, unless you're a complete idiot. The days of spilling coffee on a desk are long gone, because there are so many other ways you can back it up and recover.
Yeah.
But so that I lost about 200 words, but it was quite dramatic, and it was one of those Hamlet cigar moments, I think you say. I mean, a real Hamlet cigar moment. And I suppose it's rather like, it was rather like when Colin Firth in Love Actually loses in the script, the manuscript blows into the lake, and he's going with the au pair. So anyway, it was a good story.
So now, when you did the journey to Rome, what were the sort of highlights of that journey for you? Because you went through several countries, of course.
Well, I think in Britain, travelling through the Kent countryside, I think we get in. The cliche is that Kent is sort of a suburb of London, but actually the reality is it is a beautiful county, and much of it is remote. So any visit to Kent without going to Canterbury is a lost visit. Canterbury is a wonderful city, and with the cathedral there, you get a great sense of just timelessness almost, and when you realise that is where our national saint shouldn't be St George, it should be St Thomas of Becket. And the story of Thomas of Becket is remarkable. He was promoted to Archbishop. I mean, Justin Welby, opinion years back, he was promoted to Archbishop in one day, from being a priest, bishop, all the way up the tree. And the moment he became the Archbishop of Canterbury, he said to Henry, that the king, who he'd fought alongside in battles and so on, he said, I will become your opposition, because that is my job. The role of the church is to question the authority of the monarch. and he did, and he was staying for it. When he went that evening to Evensong, he knew he was going to be murdered. He knew where they were going to come from, and he was slaughtered actually at the altar. And you think, by golly, that Canterbury was the most visited shrine in England, in Britain, probably, until the dissolution of the monasteries when Cromwell's men. Sorry, no, I got that wrong. When the church was desecrated, and his tomb at the same time, and that is great sadness. So Canterbury's one place. I think in France, I would say that the great forests of France capture me, the size of them, and the enormity. You get a sense, rather like when you're swimming, say, in deep ocean, that there's this enormous depth below you, and you get the sense of history and this great expanse of forestry that has been there for centuries and centuries and centuries. And there is rather like Germans, there's a great sort of French folklore of forestry management and living in the forest and foraging in the forest. The other place that really affected me in a big way was the Cathedral of Leon, which is the most remarkable building. And I for some reason, sometimes you have good days walking and sometimes you have bad days walking, and I'm not a great walker. Actually, surprise you, but I'm a slow walker, and I think my journey that day was only something like 20-25 miles, and that's not to brag. It was quite a long hop for me, but I didn't know whether I got heat exhaustion, but I had a terrible day of it. It seemed to take ever, and I got to this enormous building, and I never forget the sense of arriving at it. As a pilgrim in the Middle Ages, I think the sense of travel today is as it was in many cases throughout time. The sense of place, I think, never changes. Really, you get a sense of character of it. And I thought how it must have been. It was like for a pilgrim, it's like a football fan arriving at Wembley Stadium saying, "My God, look at this!" And these enormous 3 doors as you come to the entrance doors, like this big sort of baylines, sort of whale mouth, and just drawing you in with all the saints carved in. And then up in the bell towers, magical animals from rhinoceroses to lynxes to lions and tigers, all poking out from the stonework. And it was a remarkable building, and it just made you realise what a great undertaking a pilgrimage is. And it is not great in terms of it is the humility of the journey. You're carrying just a rucksack or a staff, and a stick and a sort of a day bag, and that's all your worldly possessions. And you're at the mercy of church. But also, if you have you have doubts on a journey, you always have doubts. It is not traveling through the Greek islands. It's not sunshine every day. In fact, it is at times very miserable. It can be lonely, but you have great doubts, and then you realise that you do these things, that you have to succeed, because if you don't succeed, that the wrath of God will come down on you. There's such force and ferocity that you will never be able to live again. I make light of it. What I mean by that is that the fear of God is about letting other people down. It is your reputation, and as if you start out on something, you have to see it through. And it is fear of God, fear of family, fear of regiment. It is that pride. That's who we are. That's what we do, and that day reminded me of that you just keep going, and you will, and beam by beam we will fill the jar, and you'll get there in the end.
And of course, that's back in those days when people were living in, we'll call them shacks for want of a better word, and then you had this amazing edifice of a cathedral, and as a devout pilgrim, that's a great monument to God, and it's what you look up to. And when you were telling me that, I'm reminded of a documentary I saw a few years ago on telly, and it was of these people who'd been to an Indonesian or somewhere like that tribe, and they brought these people to London on a plane. Of course, they'd never been on a plane before, and they had a spirit house in their own village. And then when they came to London and they went up the Shard, or not, it wasn't the Shard because before that, but up one of the towers in London, and they were looking down on the churches, and they expressed their horror. They said the spirit house should be the biggest and tallest building in the village, not all these banks around it. And of course, it was a great metaphor for our materialism and how the world has changed,
but it should be
where our God is now.
But you mentioned that, and if you then go on through Switzerland, Switzerland was remarkable. It's like California in comparison to the rest of Europe. Rich, young, vibrant, and then you get down to Siena, and Siena is a most remarkable city. But they were building at the time, or in the Dark Age, in the 14th century, they were building what was going to be the largest cathedral known to man. It was going to be bigger than the Vatican. It was, and until Florence came along. But what did for Siena was the Black Death, and so the Duomo in Siena is actually unfinished. It is only one side of the nave, and when you understand that, and that the Black Death did for Siena because it enabled Florence to build the bigger cathedral, and it enabled Florence to invade Siena and capture it, and that is the rarity. To me, Siena was perhaps one of the greatest places to visit, and also Monteregione, which is a sort of mini Siena nearby. That was for me perhaps the best part of being in Italy. Arriving in Italy from Switzerland was like landing feet first in a sort of cocktail party. That's my sort of take on Italy. It's vibrant. They're full of character. They're very animated people. But it was Siena that perhaps left a lasting impression on me because how it's been raped and ravaged by the Black Death, and that when you understand that, that's what really sets it in even today on Siena as a city.
And then of course you ended up in Rome, and for anybody who's not been to Rome, well, my goodness, you have to go to Rome. I couldn't believe it. I was 50 when I first went to Rome. And I can't imagine.
I thought you were 50.
Well, everyone says that, Harry. But and so I couldn't believe that I hadn't been there before. It is absolutely breathtaking what the Romans did without computers, cranes, or anything else. I mean, these buildings are staggering, and they're so tough they've managed to withstand earthquakes. Many of them.
When Belloc wrote The Path to Rome, he made a comment about something like it's 1894, and these are the age. It's always this year. We always think that we are the forward edge of society or whatever. I think that the people in the Middle Ages were as erudite and as travelled as the people in the Roman times. They were the same. We're all at that level. I think they were. None of them were. I think they're all very educated, very sophisticated, and I think we through our own arrogance at times think that they weren't. I think they were equally as animated, and it would be very, very similar today. The same characters are there. They all look the same. We might be a bit thinner, but and the houses might be heated in different ways. But I think it was very similar, and I also think that people travelled as much, and the life today, which is we've all arrived here by the same handing down. We're very similar, and we might not think so because the internet and so on, but it's very similar in character to what it was like. Always the same.
So, where's the next book about? I'm going to interview after it's published, so we can give you a good plug at the time. But tell me what the next book is about.
The next book is A Road for All Seasons. It comes out next March 2026. It is it was my 6,500. This is 6,500 miles through Britain to get a sense of Britain at the time as we exited the European Union, and so there's much change in the book, but it records, I think, I always like to write positively about anywhere you go. I think it's a better way to write. People might criticize me for that because I choose not to perhaps see the warts for all they are. Well, perhaps I do, but I just prefer to see rounded warts and nice warts than the horrible warts. It is very easy to be critical. I think it is hard perhaps at times to look for the upbeat story, but I always try and focus on that. And you get a sense of I enjoy hugely visiting the Muslim communities in Bradford because you get an understanding that it's about, we are all about Britain, but what I do get is a sense that these communities aren't necessarily very connected, and it is the joining of the two that is important, the integration, because it is our Britain, it is all of our Britain, and it belongs to all of us, and we must make it what it is. So that was what I came away with. It is a sense of change since then. I mean, for example, when Boris Johnson actually finally signed the Brexit Withdrawal Act, I think on the 3rd of January 2022, I think it was 2021. I remember that what happened that night was that a lone firework went up in the sky in our village. Puzzled the dog, rolled over, farted, and we had bacon for breakfast as we all do. So life went on. Life does go on. But behind, underneath all that, I went round the Honda plant at Swindon, and I watched Honda 6 running off the plant, being made from an iron ingot, and then going all around the factory plant until out came 18 hours later a Honda Civic, brand new. That Honda plant now is nothing more than a Japanese memorial garden. That's very sad, but it is important to record that it was there. Honda moved its plant to Swindon because the Swindon Works, the Great Western Railway. Swindon is a centre of engineering excellence.
Absolutely.
Worldwide, and the fact that we've lost that is a sadness. We'll make it up in other ways, and I don't in the book, and I deliberately don't say whether Brexit was a good thing or a bad thing, because history will judge that in the same way. And
Yes.
I'm not the person to make. I'm not the person. I'm not the person to make that. It's not for me to comment. It's for me to remark and to observe. That's the role of the travel writer. You're not centre story. You're the chap sitting in the corner of the square, just taking notes and watching the world go by.
So that book is around Britain, about being around Britain. Where in the world have you not yet travelled to that you would like to go to, and maybe write a book or not about it? Is there somewhere on your bucket list that you think I would love to go to a particular place? I mean, imagine with the army you travelled much of the world anyway.
Yeah,
but-
we did rather. I tell you where I would like to go hugely. It fascinates me, is to Russia, and of course it has relearned it has taken on once again the mantle of being the bad boy of the world, but it is a remarkable country to travel through, and they of course are remarkable people. It is enormous. I mean, I don't think we can perhaps quite comprehend the size of it, and so it is so varied and such remarkable sort of landscapes and great history, and again at the heart of it, the great Russian the Orthodox Church, which is an enigma in its own right. And it would be fascinating to travel, to travel through and to understand. And I mean, you never know what's happening next. I can tell you what I think the next two books are, but whether that actually happens is a completely different thing altogether. Because serendipity, or life has a habit of getting in the way. And I remember with Tramp, I mean that book I think I toured with for about 4 years, and then suddenly my publisher said, "You're going," and I was off. And that it is when you get thrown in the deep end that you that's the joy of it, really. It's more than unexpected surprises, and suddenly you go off in another direction.
Yeah, well, we look forward to those future books. Harry, it's been an absolute delight talking to you.
My pleasure.
And so if you have not yet read it, my personal recommendation is In the Dolphin's Wake. It's a great size for a holiday book, actually. I'm just about to set off on a cruise for a whole month, and so I'm taking Johnson at 10 to either ruin or finish my holiday. But in 25 days, I might get through 640 pages.
You're in very, very safe hands, Anthony.
And Like a Tramp, Like a Pilgrim is the other book we would recommend to you today. So, Harry, thank you so much.
Great to be on the programme. Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure to have you. Thank you.